Chapter 20. Riddle upon Riddle. After Mucius had separated from Antonius, he hurried along so as not to lose the fat man in the darkness. The deserted forum slumbered in the early glow of dawn. Even the multitude of colored marble statues all around seemed to be asleep. The fat man was heading toward the massive building of the prefect. Is it possible? Mucius thought. Could he be the dreaded city prefect, Lucius Terentius Manilius? His suspicion was confirmed in a surprising way. A rider on a white horse, covered with sweat, came galloping up to the fat man from the Via Sacra. "Manilius! Manilius!" he shouted, still far off. "I bring an important message." Manilius spun around. "What is it, Gophras?" Mucius crouched behind a bench and peered around it. "By Jupiter, the mysterious fat man really is the prefect," he said to himself. That's probably why he was so careful not to be recognized by the ex-gladiator. As far as Mucius could make out, the horseman was an officer of the rural mounted police. He was covered with dust and exhausted. He must have been on the road for hours. He sprang off his horse and started talking excitedly to the prefect. Mucius was exasperated because he couldn't hear what the man was saying. The officer didn't remain long, but swung back into the saddle and galloped back the way he had come. Manilius turned away from the prefecture as though he had suddenly changed his mind, and rushed instead down Tuscan Street. Mucius followed. The pursuit led over the Velabrum, across the Forum Boarium, and ended behind Callan's slave shack on the Tiber, where the Egyptian bark was still bobbing at its mooring. Manilius stopped a moment and looked around intently. Mucius quickly hid in an archway. The prefect climbed over the railing of the bark and vanished into one of the cabins. What does this man have to do with the Egyptian bark? Mucius wondered. Suddenly, it struck him that perhaps the ex-gladiator was holding Caius prisoner somewhere in the bowels of the ship. The cutthroat probably knew the sailors, and now Manilius wanted to cross-examine Caius himself. "I must sneak on board and get to the bottom of it, no matter what," Mucius said. It was a bold undertaking, and so, using every precaution, he scrutinized the boat closely. Nobody was in sight but a lone sailor sleeping at the rudder. A dim band of light fell on the gangplank from the porthole of the cabin. The river washed against the boat with a gurgling sound. In the middle of the Tiber, almost parallel to the bark, rode the Trireme at anchor, the Roman battleship with 3 tiers for the rows of oars manned by galley slaves. It was the patrol boat the boys had seen early in the morning, rowing down river. In an emergency, I can swim over there, Mucius reflected. The Egyptian boat, smaller than the Trireme, had only 1 tier of oars. From her forward deck rose a short mast. Approximately 1 arm's length below its tip hung a crow's nest. A huge box wrapped in canvas stood in front of the mast. What could be in that box? Mucius wondered, but he had more important things to do than concern himself with that. Nor did he wait any longer, but stooping as he went, slipped hurriedly across the open space between Callan's shack and the boat, swung himself over the railing, and crawled like a snake on his stomach over to the cabin. He lay stretched out flat under the porthole so that the light wouldn't fall on him. In the cabin, 2 men were speaking. One was Manilius, the other in Egyptian. "Ammon," Mucius heard the prefect say, "we've got to leave. Paulino has been arrested." "By Isis and Osiris," the man called Ammon groaned. "Where did you learn that?" "Gophras, a captain of the rural police who serves me faithfully, warned me in the nick of time just now. If Paulino betrays us, we're finished. If we leave immediately, we can still reach Alexandria before they catch up with us. Then we can disappear in Ethiopia as planned. The mighty arm of Rome doesn't reach that far." "Absolutely, Lucius, my old friend. We'll set off at once. As captain, I'm responsible for my men," he replied. but I still don't understand who would dare to arrest Paulino." "The Senator Vinicius. It was at his command," Manilius explained. 12 cohorts of the Praetorian Guard took Paulino and his bodyguard prisoner at Veii, not far from the gates of Rome. Only Vinicius had the right to have General Paulino arrested. He is the proconsul and represents the emperor. The emperor is in Capri and gave Vinicius a completely free hand. Now I know, too, who the senator was whom Paulino wanted killed, and quickly. Vinicius, obviously. Somehow he must have gotten wind of Paulino's secret plan and told the emperor. And now I too understand why they wanted to murder Vinicius, Mucius thought. But what is the secret plan they're talking about? Unluckily, that ex-gladiator Gorgon didn't find the messenger with the letter, Manilius continued. Mucius inwardly rejoiced. "I guess we queered that one for you, eh?" he said to himself. The prefect didn't say anything about Caius, though. The captain gave a command to somebody in Egyptian, a language Mucius couldn't understand. Instantly, a sailor shot out of the cabin, ran to the stern of the boat, and disappeared down a hatchway. Nevertheless, Mucius was determined to remain where he was. He would have preferred leaving then, but he kept hoping to hear something about Caius. "So we have to give up all our dreams of the riches Paulino promised us, Lucius," Captain Ammon said. "What good is all the gold in the world if you pine your life away in a cell here in Rome?" Manilius replied with a grim laugh. "What will become of Cerberus?" the captain asked. "It will be impossible to smuggle him into Egypt with us." "There's no time to get him off our necks now," Manilius said. "We'll throw him overboard once we put out to sea." "Cerberus?" Mucius wondered. What, by Jupiter, is that supposed to mean? Riddle upon riddle. Mucius held his breath and listened. Manilius had mumbled something about Caius. Ammon said in reply, "And what's to happen to the boy Gorgon locked in the catacombs?" Mucius was shocked. "Oh, how horrible," he thought. "Poor Caius! What catacombs could they have put him in?" He listened anxiously for Manilius's answer. "I've given Gorgon the job of sending the boy into the arena tomorrow morning with all the other prisoners. Then we're rid of him for good. The boy knows more than is good for him, or for us." "Oh, Jupiter!" Mucius groaned. "Now I must get out of here. We must be there ahead of Gorgon. We must save Caius before tomorrow morning." But it was too late. A dozen sailors had streamed out of the hatch and spread over the deck like a swarm of frightened ants. At the same time, another group stormed over the pier into the bark. Mucius's retreat was cut off, nor did he dare slip over the other side to dive into the Tiber, because it was teeming with sailors there too. They would have caught him easily. Mucius pressed himself closer against the wall outside of the cabin and looked desperately for a hiding place. The sailors at the pier untied the line and shoved the boat offshore. Then they jumped on board, and the bark moved toward the middle of the river. An iron hammer struck an anvil with a resounding ring. In a body the oars shot out of the side hatches, and the ship headed downstream, first slowly, then picking up speed all the time. "Fortune help me," Mucius whispered. "They'll catch me and lock me up in some hole. I'll be an unwilling passenger to Egypt. Or maybe they'll throw me overboard when we get out to sea. The mysterious Cerberus and me." The oars slapped the water in rhythm to the hammer blows, and the houses along the harbor swept swiftly past Mucius's eyes. All of a sudden, a sailor leaned over him, grabbed him, and shouted something in Egyptian. Mucius tore himself loose and ran blindly to the foredeck. At first the sailor was confused, but then he ran after him. Other sailors joined the chase. He heard Manilius thunder, "Seize him! Seize him! He's a spy!" Mucius bumped into the mast and caught sight of a rope ladder that led to the top. In his desperation he climbed up into the air with the speed of a monkey. At the top he forced himself through an opening in the floor of the crow's nest, got to his feet, and looked fearfully over the side. His heart sank to his knees. The sailors were climbing after him, and already were reaching for the crow's nest with both hands. Mucius quickly unloosened the sandals still tied around his waist, pulled off his cloak, and at that moment that one of the pursuers rose through the floor of the crow's nest, he threw the heavy goatskin cloak over his head. He had won a reprieve, but the sailor shook himself wildly, and the cloak slid from his shoulders. "I'm lost," Mucius said, shuddering. It was impossible for him to dive into the river from here. Inevitably he would land on the deck and break every bone in his body. "Heavens, what can I do?" he stammered. The sailor jammed himself into the opening, and as the upper part of his body came into the crow's nest, he grinned triumphantly at Mucius like a bloodthirsty pirate. Suddenly the wooden underbeam of the Emilius Bridge loomed up swiftly toward the ship, and in a flash Mucius saw salvation. "I've got to try. It must work," he said, gathering courage. The bridge was already above him. He ducked down, snapped himself up with a mighty bound into the air, clung to one of the crossbeams with his arms, pulled up his legs, and the bark hurtled away under him. The boat swept beneath the bridge and disappeared from his sight. Mucius rejoiced. He was saved. He pulled himself up, crouched on a beam, and sighed with relief. "But how am I going to get out of here?" he wondered. He looked over at the crossbeams. Eureka! He could swing himself from one to the other all the way to the buttresses at the shore. Soon afterward his feet touched the ground. Far in the distance he saw the mast of the Egyptian bark pull all the way behind the next bridge, the Cestius Bridge. "May Neptune impale you on his trident on the way," he yelled after the boat, laughing scornfully. He was tired and felt as if he had been beaten. He sat down on a stone stairway leading to the river and rested. The sun was just rising above the Palatine Hill, and the roofs and domes of the imperial palace glowed as though swept by fire. Hordes of slaves, armed with baskets and shopping bags, streamed across the Velabrum toward the marketplace. The fragrance of incense wafted toward Mucius from the temple of Aesculapius on the Tiber island, just opposite from where he was sitting. "The gods are being sacrificed too," Mucius reflected. "I should join the ceremony in gratitude." A violent fit of sneezing seized him, and that brought him back to his senses. He jumped to his feet and marched off, to get back to Xanthus's school as quickly as he could. But on the way he kept watching like an eagle to make sure the ex-gladiator didn't suddenly turn up and surprise him. Nevertheless, he hurried, for his friends were certainly waiting for him impatiently by now. "Well, worrying won't harm them," Mucius muttered to himself as he trotted along Tuscan Street. "They've been lounging around the whole time while I nearly perished. Anyway, at least I've found out where Caius is. He couldn't know that Antonius had already beat him to it." Nevertheless, Mucius had uncovered something of vital importance without, at the moment, being the least aware of what it was.